Pardon the interruption, but I'm Mike Wilbon. It's National Candy Corn Day. Tony, you like candy corn? You know I love it.
Tony Kornheiser, sure. In fact, my pole dancing name was Candy Kornheiser.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you put images we don't want it. Candy corn. Tomorrow's Halloween. How can today be National Candy Corn Day? I have some in the car. I'm not supposed to have it. Candy corn and sweet tea. They're the greatest thing it's on God's earth. Candy corn.
It's so surprising to me that you're not supposed to have it because it's made of everything artificial and nothing natural. Why would anybody say don't eat that?
Candy
Welcome
corn,
to PTI, boys and girls. In today's episode, Wemby faces Holmgren tonight. Will Venable wants to manage the worst team in baseball, and Troy Aikman joins us for 5 good minutes. But we begin today with the Yankees staying alive in the World Series after they won Game 4 last night, 11-4, led by a grand slam by Anthony Volpe and homers by Austin Wells and Gleyber Torres. Volpe, Wells, and Alex Verdugo, the bottom of the Yankee order, combined for 5 hits and 7 RBI. Wilbon, what are your observations about how last night played out?
It's pretty basic. I don't think there's a lot underlying here. They hit. The Yankees hit. And they didn't wait around for Aaron Judge. They didn't say, all the pressure's on Aaron Judge. We got to wait for Aaron Judge to hit. No, hit the damn baseball. You're in Yankee Stadium. You're the American League champion. You have got to do so. And by the way, I do like the fact that Judge did not go just swinging at things out of the strike zone like he had in the previous games in the World Series. And so maybe that will help straighten him out. I thought the walks were as important as the hit late. But nonetheless, the Yankee batting order, it's a team. They got 9 guys. Don't tell me you got to wait for Judge. Pretty simple formula. Will it work again tonight? I don't know. But that's all that happened last night to me of consequence, Tone.
Yeah, I think that the person who was least surprised by that outcome has to be Dave Roberts, because he designated this as a bullpen game, and then he said that he was going to try to hold back his very good relievers.
Yep.
So you're hoping to win, but you're acknowledging that you might not win, because it's part, when you're up 3-0, it's part of a longer strategy that the Dodgers can have. The Yankees can't have any strategy like that. And this is the consequence of bullpen games, and one of the reasons why people like you and I hate bullpen games. I'll be honest with you, Mike. I thought when Freddie Freeman hit that home run, that's 2 games in a row, a first-inning multi-run home run, and in the last 3 games, another early home run, multi-run. I thought they were going to win. I thought it was fated for them to win. I looked at Freddie Freeman as a magician who had made the Yankees disappear. And I know I'm not in a text chain like you, but I was at my phone last night and I wrote these sentences to a variety of people. That's the most spectacular performance in the history of the game. And it might be the most spectacular performance in any series, in any sport.
Freddie Freeman?
But he was robbed of that. Yeah, Freddie Freeman. But he was robbed of that moment by the Yankees and by the grand slam and by the fact that for the first time in the World Series, the Dodgers bullpen wasn't any good. And that's what occurred to me last night.
Freeman has been great, period. He's been great. That home run, it's kind of cheesy. I mean, it's 203 feet down the right. You know right field at Yankee Stadium is nothing. I mean, you can just sort of kiss it out of there. But Freeman has been great. The home run was kind of cheesy. I thought the Yankees had a shot. Didn't think they're going to score 11. Now, the Yankees try to turn last night's spark into something more substantial. They send their ace, Garrett Cole, to the mound against Jack Flaherty of the Dodgers in a rematch of Game 1. Tone, do you like now the Yankees' chances of winning again tonight and sending the series back to Los Angeles for Game 6?
Okay, so you have to be of a certain age to appreciate what I'm going to say now. But it's not a big age. It's really not. Anybody 25 and over can remember probably that 20 years ago, the Yankees were up 3-0 in a series against Boston in the ALCS, and they lost all 4. And before Game 4, I think Kevin Millar said, don't let us win tonight. And that appeared to be prophetic. These Yankees know all about that. And they're probably saying, if it happened to us, we can make it happen to someone else. The problem is, never happened in the World Series. All right, anybody down 0-3 loses. They don't even get to Game 6. They don't, let alone Game 7. They don't get to Game 6. 24 teams have been in this circumstance, and none of them, of those 25 have gotten past Game 5. 24 have gotten past Game 5. Now, the Yankees have Cole. He's the reigning American League Cy Young guy. He's the best pitcher they got. He's got an ERA in the World Series of 1.50. I would bet on them. I think it is going back for 6 to LA.
I'd like to see it go back because you get a real series. Here's what I wonder, and I was thinking about that whole thing with the Red Sox too, and Kevin Millar. Do the Yankees have that kind of personality? I know Rizzo, who held a meeting to help the Cubs in 2016 win the World Series, he held a similar one before Game 3. It didn't help win that game, but they are alive. Rizzo, is he a big enough personality and important enough to that team? Do the Yankees have that? Can they manufacture that? So I don't know about that, Tone. I do like Garrett Cole going because I'm stubborn enough, as are you, to think that an ace in the World Series going at home, who's proven like Garrett Cole, ought to mean something for the New York Yankees. So I'm hoping now, even though, look, I'm rooting for the Dodgers to win the whole thing. But I want to see a Game 6. I want to see this thing play out longer. Garrett Cole's got to get him there. And at bottom of the order, top of the order, the Yankees have enough people, enough talent to hit the ball, damn it. So, stop swinging the balls outside the strike zone.
Give me 10
and have some
seconds
timely hitting.
Give me 10 seconds here. So I want to talk about those fans who assaulted Mookie Betts last night in the first inning on that fly ball to right. They better not be there tonight. They said yesterday that they were going to be allowed back in, but today Major League Baseball and the Yankees said you can't come back in. You're barred from the stadium. They ought to not just be barred from tonight's game. They ought to be barred from baseball forever.
Wow.
They thought that they had every right to do what they did because they're tough guys. Really? They should actually be prosecuted. Let's stay with baseball. ESPN's Jeff Passan and Jesse Rogers are reporting that the Chicago White Sox will hire Will Venable as their manager. Venable is a former Major League player who has coached for the Cubs, Red Sox, and most recently the Rangers. The White Sox have the worst record in baseball history this past season, 41-121. Wilbon, you're Mr. Chicago. Does this feel like a good job or a bad job?
Tony, it's got elements of both. And Venable's he had some terrific apprenticeships. So you're not going to look at this and say, well, he's not prepared. But Tony, people have to understand the nature of Chicago and the White Sox relative to the Cubs and all the other teams, all the other forms of sport entertainment in Chicago. There's no pressure. There's less pressure on winning on the south side of Chicago with that team than there is any team in Chicago, and maybe any team in baseball. There just aren't the expectations, Tone. And so nobody's going to yell and scream, oh, you got to be fired if they don't turn it around immediately. I don't know what the talent level will be because they've sold off so many actually talented players. The White Sox are only a couple of years removed from people predicting they were going to be in the World Series in short order. So there's no pressure. There's none. There's less pressure than there can be on any of the teams in Major League Baseball. So maybe it's not such a bad place after all.
I think it's a pretty good job. I just don't think it's a pretty good job right now. So if I'm Venable, I'm going to ask for at least a 5-year deal because I don't think I can be very good maybe at the end of 5 years. I'm not certain about that. On the other hand, what makes it a good job is what you're saying. There's no particular pressure. There's only up. Like if you win 50 games and lose 112, everybody thinks you're brilliant. If you only win 38 and lose 124, they say, well, you didn't get a hand that you were dealt. You had a bad hand that you were dealt. So I think in that regard, it's probably a good job. You mentioned his resume. I don't remember Will Venable as a major league player at all. I know nothing about him. But here are people who he has worked for. Theo Epstein, Joe Madden, Alex Cora, and Bruce Bochy. So, Mike, if he took notes with a pen, he's got a master's degree right now. Let's take a break. Coming up, what should C.J. Stroud do now that Stephon Diggs is out for the season? We're going to ask Troy Aikman.
We'll also ask him where he sees the unbeaten Chiefs, or whether he sees the unbeaten Chiefs as being at all vulnerable. Yeah, Tony, that job, people aren't even paying attention. And I'm a Southsider. Yeah, I'm a Cub fan who's a Southsider. But people aren't paying attention to the White Sox on any great scale. That's
in 2021, they...
Pardon the interruption is presented by the refreshing taste of Twitter.
Let's dig into some NFL issues with one of our favorite recurring guests over many years, ESPN Monday Night Football analyst, Hall of Fame quarterback Troy Aikman. Troy, let's start with this. Colts coach Shane Steichen said today that Joe Flacco will be the Colts quarterback going forward. You've been a young quarterback, highly drafted. You've been a veteran quarterback, highly decorated. Do you identify more with Anthony Richardson or with Joe Flacco?
I'm not sure I identify with either one of them. I never took myself out of a game because I was fatigued. Maybe because I couldn't run fast enough to get tired. And then, at 39 years old, I was in my 5th year of broadcasting, so I can't relate to that either. So I'll say neither one of those guys.
Were you surprised, Troy, when that news comes down about benching Anthony Richardson, at least for now, or is that totally understandable?
I think it's understandable where that team is right now, and that one's hard to understand, and it feels to me like maybe he'll be better served just on the sidelines and watching for a few games and kind of gathering himself and just kind of learning what it takes to be a professional. And it also sounds like Joe probably gives them the best chance to win. And I hope Joe plays well. I root for all the quarterbacks for that matter. But what he was able to do last year in Cleveland, I hope he's able to replicate that in Indianapolis.
We're going to ask you to step into another quarterback's shoes for a second. If you're C.J. Stroud, if you've lost Stephon Diggs for the season, what's going through your mind literally as a quarterback when you get that news and you know you got to make adjustments? What are some of them?
Well, I think for C.J. Stroud, the good thing for him is he plays on a really talented team. Now he's lost some good players. You mentioned Stephon Diggs, and then, of course, Nico Collins is also out. But I like Bobby Slowick, their offensive coordinator, and I think that within that scheme, that Kyle Shanahan offense, if there's an offense that can overcome injuries like that and utilize some of the other players that they have, whether that's Tank Dell or Joe Mixon or even Dalton Schultz at tight end, I believe that Bobby Slowick can do that. And then also their defense has been playing really good football. Now, I don't envy C.J. Stroud when you go in without your top receivers, but I do think that they'll find a way to move the football and play complementary football. I like that Houston team. There's so many injuries this year. It's crazy what we've seen, but I believe they'll be able to kind of weather it, if you will, until they get some of them back.
You were on such great teams, of course, Troy. You never had to really daydream about being anywhere else. But as you look across the league right now, across the landscape, when it's personnel, when it's coaching, when all the conditions are taken into play, is there some place you say, you know what, I'd like to strap it up with that team. They're pretty good. I'd like to have a run with them?
Well, the team that I've been a real admirer of here over the last several years is the San Francisco 49ers. I mentioned Kyle Shanahan offense. I love what he's been doing in the league as an offensive coordinator. I love the way his teams play. I watched that game Sunday night against the Cowboys, and they just play a physical style of ball that you really don't see it that much in today's game. It reminds me a lot of the teams that I was a part of in Dallas. I like their offense, the play action game, the way they set up the run and the pass. And so I would probably go with the 49ers, but I also like the Detroit Lions. Dan Campbell, he was never a teammate of mine, but he's a guy that I admired when he was here in Dallas. I got a chance to hear him talk more when he was on the radio. He had a weekly show, and then watching him and what he's been able to do as the head coach in Detroit, I really respect him and the way that team plays. It embodies really everything that he is, and that's tough, resilient, everything that he claimed at his press conference when he got the job. And so I've been a big fan of what they've done in Detroit as well.
We will get you out of here on this. On Monday night, you have the Buccaneers and the Chiefs on Monday night this week. You mentioned C.J. Stroud not having receivers. Baker Mayfield's best 2 receivers are out, so he doesn't have any receivers. But let's talk about Kansas City. They are unbeaten. They are the only unbeaten team out there. As you look at them, is there an area where you think they might be particularly vulnerable?
I don't think so, Tony, because they're vulnerable now. I mean, right now is when they've been vulnerable. Their defense has been fantastic. Their defense is really the main reason. Hard to say that when you've got Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, why they won the Super Bowl last year. But they're playing good again this year on that side of the ball. Defensively, with all the injuries that they've had at wide receiver, they're still undefeated and they're still winning games. And it reminds me a lot of what happened last year, that they're not playing great, but they're finding ways to win. They're relying on running the football. I never thought we'd say that about an Andy Reid coach football team, but yet he's shown that he's willing to adjust. And I really like what I've seen from them in that regard. And they're only going to get better offensively, I believe. And DeAndre Hopkins, bringing him in, I think we'll see even a better version of him this week after another week under his belt within that offense. And so I don't see them being vulnerable. In fact, I just think they get stronger. And once they get into the postseason, they've got more experience than anybody. So I think they're as vulnerable as they're going to be. And if you're going to get them, now's the time. But yet nobody's done it.
Yeah. Thanks as always, Troy. It's such a pleasure for us to have you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Appreciate
You bet.
it.
Thank you, fellas.
Let's take one last break. Still to come, the NBA fines the 76ers, but not specifically for holding out Joel Embiid.
I feel like Tony issued that fine. Just something I don't like about that. Victor Wembanyama, Chet Holmgren, tonight they meet for the first time this season. Apparently, Tony plain don't like each other.
You know, Troy's been with us for years and years here and there.
Great.
It's always good. It goes back a long time.
Great.
He's like
Great
part
to
of
hear,
PTO.
Troy.
The Interruption is presented by the refreshing taste of Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea. Please drink responsibly. Part of Happy Hour.
Happy time, people. Happy 88th birthday, Dick Vermeil.
Wow.
The Hall of Fame coach began his career at UCLA in 1974. Vermeil stayed there 2 years, went 15-5-3. He was 1-1 against USC when USC-UCLA was every bit as big as Ohio State and Michigan. Vermeil went from UCLA to the NFL with the Philadelphia Eagles. He was there 7 years, went 54-47, and went to the Super Bowl in 1980. Then he went to television for 14 years before coming back to the St. Louis Rams. Vermeil was the coach when the Rams, the greatest show on turf, won the Super Bowl in 1999. Vermeil then retired on top, but came back and coached Kansas City for 5 years and went 44-36. Vermeil retired for good after the 2005 season.
There's so many Vermeil stories. My favorite one, real quickly, is he moved from west to east. He came east. He was in his office so many hours a day, he would never be outside during daylight. And he gets to Philadelphia and he goes outside and he sees the leaves turn colors in the fall and he wept. This is insane. This is insane. I don't even know if the story's true, but he went with it, and it's a great story.
Happy anniversary Rumble in the Jungle on this day 50 years ago. Muhammad Ali rope-a-dope George Foreman in Kinshasa, Zaire.
Ugh.
Ali gave up his body in the short term, absorbing blow after blow by Foreman, who eventually tired himself out. Ali knocked Foreman out in the 8th round, a triumph of will and strategy. Ali was the overwhelming crowd favorite. Nearly 60,000 people in attendance chanted Ali Boumaye throughout the fight. It's hard to tell people now who were not around for Ali's career how compelling a figure he was. He was the most recognized person in the world. More than presidents, more than popes, more than movie stars. Biggest star I have ever been around.
Amen to everything you said, Tony. That fight, there were 2 times I remember in my life where my dad thought Ali was going to get hurt seriously. The first fight against Sonny Liston and the fight against George Foreman. And he wouldn't watch. He didn't want to watch. I'm like, what are you saying? And Ali was such a figure, such an enormous figure in our household and in our lives. He couldn't stand the notion of Ali being beat down. Well, there was no beat down. Ali did the beat downs.
Happy trails to $100,000 of the Sixers' money. The NBA fined the organization $100 large for not being more specific in its public statements about the condition of Joel Embiid's left knee. It did not fine the Sixers for actually holding Embiid out for the team's first 3 games of the season, nor has anyone been specific about what might be wrong with the knee. Embiid has also been ruled out of tonight's home game against the winless Pistons, despite having scrimmaged with the team the last several days. Joining Embiid in street clothes once again will be Paul George. There's a basketball season going on, When are the 76ers going to deign to reward their fans by actually playing their players?
I think we're going to have this go on for a while, Tony, all season. Paul George, they need right now a little bit more than Embiid, I think.
Let's go to the big finish quickly.
Let's do it.
Lonzo Ball of your Bulls strained his right wrist in Monday night's win at Memphis. Will be evaluated in 10 days.
In his limited time, he had like 6 assists in 18 minutes. Come back, Lonzo, for a while. Connor McDavid's ankle injury is going to keep him out 2 to 3 weeks. Your thoughts?
Yes, the ankle is a lower body injury. The
There you
Mavs
go.
beat the Wolves in a rematch of the Western Conference Finals. Your takeaway?
Kyrie played better, but Luka had that shot. Luka's going to be the MVP this year. It just seems written. Alex Ovechkin scored 2 first-period goals last night. 5-3 win over the Rangers. That's a big deal, isn't it?
He's going to break the record this year.
Yeah, it looks like
Last
it.
one, Victor Wembanyama
Ooh.
at Chet Holmgren
Ooh.
tonight. Is that a big deal?
Huge deal. There's a lot of great players in the NBA, a lot of great old players, a lot of great young players. These two, future of the NBA, and a nice rivalry.
We're out of time. We'll try and do better the next time, and I'm Tony Kornheiser.
I'm Mike Wilbon. Same time tomorrow, knuckleheads. You can get the PTI podcast on the ESPN app or Apple Podcasts. And now, your sports.
I got the old Canadian flag today.
I noticed.
Not that thing I had
Welcome
yesterday.
Back. Oh,
Yeah.
Canada.